you want to tell them about your books and where you can get them?
I'm mainly on Amazon. I'm trying to get into the Canadian market, but they make it kind of hard. I'm getting there though. I just published my newest book, The Monster Number 4. It's available for Kindle on Amazon. And my newest novel, that was brilliant, is actually in the hands of my editor as we speak, and I hope that it'll be out around Christmas. Name of it is Even in Evanloss.
Lady with the red Expo shirt on, are you tech at all?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you tech at all?
No, I'm photography, but I have tech experience.
Well, because I can't get microphone 4 to work. It's not muted, it's turned up.
This one right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can take a look.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more after this.
To my right is the incredible Terry Sherwood.
I'm incredible. Well, thank you very much.
Are.
As you know, my name is still Terry Sherwood from a few seconds ago. I am a writer for mostly UK sites, The Spooky Isle, and I also review independent horror films for HorrorscreensVideo.com. I have one book of horror essays out called Screen and Scream Again, which is available on Amazon. It's more of a 60 or rather an 80-page magazine than a book, but I think it serves the purpose. Outside of that, I write thrillers in the Ian Fleming tradition. I just published one called You Only Live in Secrets. It's available on Amazon. It's a totally trashy adventure book that you can read while watching on a train or sitting at home and just toss it away, but it will entice you to pick it up.
I recommend his first book. It's very good.
Well, thank you. It's true. I recommend her first book. It's very good.
Thank you.
And I recommend both their first books. They're phenomenal.
Does anybody else recommend it?
Any questions to start with?
If you have questions, there's a microphone here. You can come up and ask or just shout. It really doesn't matter.
I'll start this out with, we're talking about the state of horror. And from my end of things, I think horror stinks. I think it's gotten into a rut. I will explain this further. We have a little bit of controversial thing I'm going to say here. I think Blumhouse stinks with the way that it produces pablum. It's very light. It's very commercial. It tries to build franchises up, which it succeeds. All the strongest horror, I think, the more edgier stuff is coming once again from independent, is coming from Europe. I even think North America has lost its edge. I'm going to throw that out.
Tend to agree, actually.
Well, I Blumhouse, I like the Halloween redo.
Yeah.
But most of their stuff, I mean, I just wish he'd stop making shitty remakes.
But there's no imagination left out there. They have to remake the movies that made the money and have the fan base.
Oh, there's some screenwriters out there doing some really good
Absolutely.
stuff.
But for general public that don't watch indie, that don't watch all of those films, they only know what's in the mainstream.
Right. Well, I would, Stuart, if you want to come up and join us here. I would say pro-indie is where it's at.
Yeah.
Like Russia's putting out some good horror films right now.
Yeah, they are. Guess what it's called? You said Russia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, guess what it's called? You can watch it on the news.
Well, yeah.
Current events. Nothing's more horrific than that.
Sorry, I tend to go off a little bit. If you guys think I'm out of it, that's okay. But that's the most horrible thing on television right now.
Yeah, no denying that. So, I just watched a Polish television series called Krakow Monsters. And it's like a 10-episode Polish TV series, and it's great. You have to, I believe Netflix may have it, or Amazon, I can't remember which one.
I
But,
think it's on Netflix.
yeah, it's good. The first 2 episodes are establishing character, which they do very well. By about episode 4, I genuinely care about these people. And it set itself up for a season 2, and I hope that happens because, there's a little kid actor in this film that if he doesn't freak you out, nothing will. He's possessed, boy, evil little fella.
Guess I know what I'm watching tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it's a really good one. In terms of reboots, remakings, requels, there have been a lot of them here at the end of 2021 and 2022. Anybody have a favorite? I know, it takes a while. What's your favorite?
I enjoyed the new Screen.
Me too. Out of all of them, I think that was my favorite.
It's very well done.
Yeah, well, and they're going to start shooting another. But yeah, I don't know how long Sydney and Gail can last, but we'll see. Anybody watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I thought it was enjoyable. It was nice to actually see a chainsaw massacre in the Texas. And
Good
I was
point.
kind of happy that they didn't follow the exact same route that Halloween did.
Mhm.
Because when you see the previews, you're thinking, oh, well, they're just going to turn Sally into a Laurie Strode, right?
Mhm.
And it kind of seemed like they were doing that, but then they kind of changed it a little bit, which I was delighted by.
Yeah. What about Candyman? Anybody see?
Haven't seen it.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I really did. It was actually terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
The fingernail part, oh.
I just love watching the cringe, sorry.
I was just wondering what your thoughts on Robert Eggers were, and if you consider his genre horror, as some people don't.
That's an interesting question. I mean, there's people that don't think by consensus, no, well, not consensus, but there's people who think The Exorcist isn't a horror film. So really, I find that for horror fans, it's subjective. If you think it's horror, then it's horror. There's nothing worse than, I belong to a whole bunch of Facebook horror groups. And of course, the infighting that happens, and if you enjoy Robert Eggers films, great.
And most genres have an element of horror in it, if you look at it realistically too.
Kind of touched on a horror series, and it's kind of a reboot, but it's also a horror series. They did it on Netflix. I was just curious on your stance on The Haunting of Hill House, because I actually think it was really well done, and maybe that's why they're not making as many great horror movies here in North America, because they're making more series.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. First of all, streamers right now, whether it be Netflix, Amazon, Shudder, they're craving original material. So, like right now I have a film, a screenplay sitting at one of those networks. And it's a game of hurry up and wait. But if you're an independent filmmaker, streaming, unless it's, one of the big boys, like, a Netflix original movie, you're not going to get the views. And thank goodness for hard media, because if you can work out a deal with any of those people to release hard media, more money. The nice thing about it, and this is why people are going away from movies, they're going towards series as creators, is because you'll get a lot more money from one of those networks. Now, as a producer, 30% of that budget goes to you. So then that's the only payment you'll ever receive, right up front. Residuals, that kind of thing, never. Unless you can strike a deal for hard media. And there are certain people that are really pushing for Netflix, Amazon to start releasing Blu-rays and, continue on with whatever format's coming next. I understand 8K Ultra is going to be a reality fairly soon, which I don't understand, because how realistic does the picture have to be where you can actually see the makeup and makeup effects? And, that's...
Kind of takes the magic out of it.
Yeah, kind of. But, I mean, let's say you watch Intruder, let's say, that was shot back in the mid-'80s. Unless they go in and totally remaster it, it's not going to look much better than a Blu-ray. So, but they like you to keep buying that hard media. Oh, we threw in an extra interview. Oh, I gotta have it.
Does anybody, sorry to interrupt Jim on that, does anybody have 4K? Like 4K TV and 4K discs and stuff? Well, I figured you would, Stuart, because you're kind of a tech guy. About 2 months ago, I got into that and everything. And I bought, mistakenly, I had to, because mistakenly I bought Deep Red in 4K, a box set, when I was down in the States. And I'm thinking, okay, because you would get like the DVD version or the Blu-ray version and the 4K. But then I looked at the case when I was home, and I went, well, that's 4K. Guess what we have to go and do now? So I had to buy a player. Fortunately, I had a television. I watched Deep Red in 4K, the Italian version, and I will have to say, it is worth it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It is worth the expense of 4K, with just the sheer depth of sound that's on that film.
Mhm.
The images are crystal clear. Universal has put out the Icon collection now of Dracula, the Invisible Man, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein out in 4K. And all I've been hearing is rave reviews about it.
Mhm.
Been coveting it.
Well, as long as they have really good original prints.
They actually struck up a new print of Lugosi's Dracula.
Wow.
And because they had to, they're actually using the same one that they started with when they made the original DVDs.
Mhm.
So they had to strike a new one. So, and it's what they call, I think, positive, they use. And from what I've read, I haven't seen it yet, but just the depth of vision in these films, it just gives a whole new dimension. Sorry, I'm a 4K booster now.
Yeah, well, they say the difference is like, do you remember VHS? And then you got DVD,
Yeah.
and there was that vast difference in picture quality. Colors didn't bleed, stuff like that. Well, apparently, that's 4K.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's gonna bring a whole new look to horror.
What out in the audience, what streaming subscriptions do you all have? Do you all have Shudder or anything else, or it's mostly Shudder? Okay. All right, well, that's something.
Netflix,
So,
Amazon, Disney Plus. Isn't it funny,
Tubi,
Arrow. Anybody
Apple,
have Arrow?
Apple.
I got Arrow.
Yeah.
Kino Cult. Kino Cult is free. Oops, it's like Tubi.
Ooh.
Kino Cult.
They had a pundit on, I think it was CBC this morning, talking about how Netflix stock is just dropped. And he was mentioning, by the time you subscribe to all these streaming services, you're basically paying for cable all over again. You know,
But there's a more wider variety of choice for people with the streaming, whereas with cable, there's not so much.
I use Plex at home because I've got like 8 terabytes of horror movies on my external drives. So with Plex, I can just stream them to my television. But the Plex channels that are available, I go, holy geez, like there's like 50 horror channels. So yeah, I'm pleased with Plex.
Which brings up one other thing I mentioned. There's too much of it. Do we all think that? Do we all? It's like there's too much TV, too many books. How do you sort that out? That's an interesting question to throw out. Especially too, I noticed we have some younger folk here, and we're glad that you're here and everything, because that's a very scary costume to have. That sort of a fat. Oh, oh. Wow, that was frightening.
That was really scary.
That was frightening.
I'm gonna
Freaking
write
me
about
out.
that.
Totally freaking me out.
So let's talk books. Is there anything that's come out horror-wise that anyone's read recently?
Who reads horror now?
Does anybody read horror anymore?
That should include print and comic too. And
Absolutely.
graphical,
Yeah, graphic
yeah.
novels included, absolutely. Anything of interest that you'd like to recommend? Go for it.
There's the SCP graphic novels coming out recently, and they're coming out with a new one as well.
Ooh,
Those are pretty good as well.
excellent. Fans of Stephen King? Everybody has to be a fan, I think, at one
No.
point or another. So what was your first Stephen King book?
Mine was The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
That was a good one.
Pet Cemetery.
Carrie.
Did you see the original movie?
Yeah,
Did it scare you?
as a kid, yeah.
Yeah.
I watched it recently.
I laughed at it now.
Yeah.
It was sort of sad, but Church was scarier in the first one.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Carrie.
Yeah, go for it.
What's your other one? Cell?
Cell, the Stephen King one. That was actually a pretty decent one. I read Dr. Sleep recently. I'm way behind. I honestly didn't like it at all. I think when Mr. King had his accident, it changed everything about the way that he writes and sees the world, and it just doesn't have the same oomph anymore.
That was the turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still horror in there because we have everyday horror, and he does touch on some of that stuff, but not quite the same.
Well, I think King is the master of making you care about the characters.
Absolutely.
And that's something that doesn't translate well to film.
The one writer that I find that has learned his trade very, very well is Mr. King's son. Joe Hill is exceptional, an exceptional storyteller. 21st Century Ghosts was delicious. Heart-Shaped Box was also fabulous. I wish they'd make a movie out of it. It was really very well done. Anybody else had any other horror?
I recently read A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay.
That was
I
good.
thought that was really good.
Yeah, it was decent. That's another one they could do a movie of. I recently saw Books of Blood on Disney Plus, and I have to say I was both surprised and pleased. Very, very well done if you want to take a look. For Disney, it was very well done. Very gory. I kind of liked it.
Well, that's because Disney gives you the option now for adult or non-adult. And of course, they're being boycotted.
I'm not unhappy about that. I still like my animated features, but give me adult movies too.
Unfortunately, most of the authors I have enjoyed over the years are dead. Richard Lehman, Jack Ketchum, Richard Matheson, people like that. Speaking of Dr. Sleep, who enjoyed the film?
No.
I mean, it's all right. It wasn't, you know, I mean, as an homage to Kubrick's The Shining, I think it was okay.
I think it was light.
That was light.
It's not more like fantasy than horror, almost.
Yeah, yeah. A little more of the supernatural sort of stuff. I mean, it wasn't bad. I wouldn't read it again, unfortunately.
I have a question for the audience. What attracts you to a book or a film that you would go to see? Is it the subject matter, the fact that you read a review of it, the fact that it's full of blood and guts, the author, the actor? I'm just curious.
All of the above.
All of the above. I knew I should have put that box at the bottom. So,
Yes.
but, are we discerning in our taste, or do we watch everything? Oh, that's a horror film. I'm going to watch that. Boom.
For me, it's more of like an all genre thing where if it looks like the technical aspects are done well, then I'll see it and then see if the plot, like the writing is done well. Like for the trailers, I'll look at like, do they know what they're doing with the camera and like editing and stuff, and then I'll go see it. The plot will speak to me after that. I don't want to hear this about mine. Like, I'm quick to go see it.
Do you prefer CGI or practical?
Practical.
Every time.
Gotta be practical. As much as possible. I mean, the script I've got sitting out there right now is a healthy combination of practical and CGI. But there are certain scenes that you couldn't do without CGI. That would be just cost prohibitive. But it's not the violence or the gore. So,
Something about the practical effects when you're doing that, it's just, it's more fun.
yeah, and we've got a huge, it's a studio in town where they have banks of televisions that can be green screen. So you can do whatever you want. And, you know, do the wires, do all kinds of effects. We essentially have 3 studios here in town now as well, including the big one. So, you know, I expect to see more film coming our way. Where do you find upcoming stuff? I mean, there used to be a site called, what was it called?
Bloody disgusting.
Well, yeah, I mean, but if you're on Facebook and you subscribe to these things, but a lot of people don't because their numbers aren't huge.
I think the internet penetration is pretty self-explanatory, and you get YouTube and everything, and with the previews, with some of the younger folk here, and their parents. Maybe their parents are here, or maybe they just came in because it's kind of cool. Do you let your children watch these types of films? Do you sit with them and do it? Yes.
The milder ones, yeah. So like your gateway horrors like Fear Street and that kind of stuff, I will watch with my kids and they will enjoy it. But some of the more super graphic ones, like let's say The Terrifier or something like that, I'm not going to show that to my kids because that'll just freak them out.
So you're not going to sit down with the kids and watch a Serbian film?
Not for me.
Human caterpillar.
I would watch that.
So who saw the television series Midnight Mass by Mike Flanagan? I thought that was superior. I thought that was really well done. And Flanagan actually is one of the ones who's going to Netflix, I believe. He's saying, come on, hard media, you know.
Well, it couldn't hurt.
No, it couldn't hurt. I mean, why wouldn't you release that in 4K?
Well, they're upping their prices so much that the cost won't be effective for them to do it unless they gotta start getting some.
Because you can
films.
stream in 4K now too.
Well, that's
You don't
true.
have to.
Not as
That's
well.
true.
It's not as good.
Yeah, it's still the bandwidth is still, unless
Okay,
you're
well, I
running
need
a
an autograph later, and I brought along a Blu-ray to get autographed. I mean, the horror fans were a little different. If you look at who buys hard media the most by genre, it's horror people. Because we want to have the behind the scenes stuff. We want to see the making of. We want interviews with the actors. We want to have the hard media that can be autographed, that kind of thing. So I don't see that going away anytime soon. Because
It'll just change like it did with VHS and beta and DVD and all of that sort of thing.
Gee,
It'll just evolve.
But business-wise, it's all about delivering the product, because that's what it comes down to. And it comes down to, does Project A make money, generate money? So if people say, like, I think we were talking earlier about VOD, that, and lots are getting released there. But it's all about delivery, and COVID has changed the way we watch things now for the last 2 years, as had a number of other factors in people's lives. But again,
Well, it's really tough on the independent filmmaker too. If you're making, low-end indie, and I know there are certain directors out there like Todd Sheets who can, put a movie out and the budget is $7,000, and you go, well, you're likely on streaming to make that back. But let's say you go and you make a movie for $250,000, and it starts to run on Amazon, Vimeo on demand, whatever. They have now reduced the amount of money you make through streaming. It used to be, 5 years ago, it was like 14 cents an hour you got paid. So basically, every time someone watched your movie, you made 21 cents. Now it's down to like 6. So it's extremely difficult for the independent filmmaker to make his money back. And that's why you see things like MakeFlix, where independent people can go and get DVD and Blu-rays made, just trying to recoup their money. And, that's a sad state of affairs, to a degree.
then there's our friends on Kickstarter and Indiegogo.
Yeah, well, there's very few campaigns that are truly successful. I think the highest contribution to an independent horror film was, I think, $125,000, which isn't all that much. Consider it.
That was why, what just adding to what Jim said, from my experience, is you make a short film, and hopefully that goes. One of the most profitable ones, and we may have seen it. It's on Arrow. If you have Arrow, Stuart has Arrow. It's a UK site. I recommend it heartily for cult films, for anything that's offbeat. Even some Italian crime films, which are really, really cool. They do stunts, car stunts without CGI, and those people can drive. There's a little film called The Stylist that is on there. That was actually a short film. It was 20 minutes, and then somebody saw it, bang, and it becomes a feature. So, which seems to be...
It can happen.
It can happen, but it's rare. I'm of two minds about the low-end indie. When you have a limited budget and you're saying, okay, well, let's do our own makeup, let's do get,
Practical effects.
well, yeah, but we don't really need actors. We can use my buddies and stuff like that. And it's usually a zombie film because zombies you can do makeup for fairly. Some of it's atrocious. But the problem is,
You should know, we've seen about 1,000 of them.
I have a review site. I was going to review every zombie movie ever made, and I stopped at about 800. I couldn't do it anymore.
Well, there's nothing new.
There's nothing new. I have a formula. You write on a piece of paper 3 really good zombie kills, 3 really good human kills. You write on a piece of paper carpentry scene, which is where they're, of course, nailing the doors and windows shut. And you put them in a hat and you mix them all around and you pull them out one by one,
Bang,
and there's your plot.
I was just wondering what your thoughts about horror video games are. If you have any thoughts about those.
I don't play video games. Terry?
I just watch other people play.
I like them.
Yeah.
I watch my kids play because I'm just not good at it.
7
But-
days to die.
Yes. But they really enjoy it, mind you. My boys are a little different. They've grown up with all the movie magic stuff. It's not a surprise for them. They're bored with horror, except for when it comes to the video games. My older son says it's because there's a whole lot more intuitiveness and there's a lot more available to, scenes to expand into with the games, whereas films are just kind of, and books are, set out a certain way. They have more options and more freedom with it.
Yeah.
I just like watching them yell things at the TV, so.
Don't they watch sports?
No.
You can do that too.
No.
Do you think
Just-
speaking on your video question too, I wonder if there would be a rather gaming question, the increase in VR games.
Well, I was gonna mention that because I remember when Resident Evil 7 came out for VR, that changed how people conceptually thought about horror video games. And so then I was playing one with my friend recently. That's just a basic shooter, but the horror and the graphics are fantastic with VR.
What's the name of that one?
I can't remember the name of it, but it was you're on a roller coaster and you go through. Oops, sorry.
Yes, I know which one you're talking
Yes,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
Do you think there is no such thing as, I know we were talking about, Jim was alluding to the fact of horror fans being different, and you talked about your children being different.
I did raise them.
And do you think horror is becoming a mixture? There is no pure horror? I have found personally that a lot of the slasher films and everything cross over to crime movies.
Yeah.
It's always
Or confinement. When you get the confinement films, when you're locked in a closet, you're watching something. That to me becomes a crime movie, which is okay.
Well, when we were talking about books, I was struggling to think about if I should bring up, because I like Joe Nestle, because I like relationship crime thrillers, and a lot of the elements in crime thriller books are horror, but they don't read actual horror. I read mostly those.
There's a lot of crossover, especially now, especially in indie, because there's so much freedom, you can kind of do what you want. I'm not that way. I will research and I will make it as true as possible because I want to terrify you. It's not because I'm being mean, I really do enjoy it. I like getting messages from people that say, oh, I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. It's the best thing in the world. I think almost every genre right now is just a cumulation of every genre. There's nothing specific anymore, and that's a shame.
But there are so many subgenres of horror.
Well, true.
Yeah, like music too and everything. It becomes tribal almost.
Mm-hmm.
You get this fellow, not singling you out, but you're wearing a shirt. And it is, in some ways, it's tribal. You like this film, you like this band, and you become part of it. one of the tributes about blending is that when we're all sitting here together, we're all coming from different points of view, which is kind of cool. I write thrillers designed to be, you just complete entertainment, put it down, well, that's great. She writes stuff to scare you. But yet we're all sitting here discussing it.
Because we're all a tribe.
So, time for a first trivia question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So do you think that this kind of hodgepodge that's happening, this culmination is actually, or could actually be like a gateway to this more pure horror? Because having something that has horror elements, like for myself, I'm not super into some of the horror stuff, but there's some movies like a Shyamalan movie, which isn't, I wouldn't say like horror, but it has some of those jump scares
elements.
and
Yeah.
some of those elements where I find, oh, this is okay, I can handle this. Maybe I can move into something a little more hardcore, if you will, and kind of have
That's
that
where
gateway. instead of-
writing, whether screenplays, however we do it, you have that freedom. If you can imagine it, it can happen. It can happen in real life. I watch a lot of true crime. Our Discovery Plus has a lot. The things that human beings do to other human beings is more terrifying than anything that Stephen King could come up with, or M. Night Shyamalan, or whoever. That's where I'm taking a lot of my own writing from, especially after 2 years of isolation with COVID. I think we're going to see a whole lot of horror coming out of that. Because again, the realities of what people did to each other during that time is often scarier than what you'll see on a big screen, like Terry mentioned with the news.
It's. I think with what we're going through now, and current events, what we're going through now, what we went through for 2 years, I think there is a real fear of mental illness. And mental illness manifests itself in many different ways. And whether that's from isolation or it's going to be coming out in themes in films, which it already has, or in books, or in the media, whether this is going to prodigiously affect the audience or not.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
You know, I actually saw a guy making shadow puppets behind us.
Yeah.
It was so weird.
I know. It's like,
I missed
and
it.
they were rude. We were going to do the rude ones, but
Okay, well, let's just ask a trivia question here. Boris Karloff had a daughter. Who could name her?
don't say Mrs. Karloff.
Well, okay. It's a hard one.
Gee, no, we can add an additional hint to that. Who made the first name of a woman who made layer cakes, frozen layer cakes, and the initial is SL. We all like them, but
Sarah.
Who said it first?
Yeah.
Come up here.
Yeah.
Now, this is a poster
Circle gets the square.
for a project that we were going to do that the funding didn't become available as quickly as we want, and there's a new film out that basically covers it. That's a poster for it. These are rare, and it's signed by Sarah Karloff herself. And
It's a lie.
thank you very much.
It is.
You're quite welcome. When
Is that eating cake counts? That's true.
No, I think, back to that question, if you look at the different subgenres, like folk horror, there's a new documentary out about folk horror, by the way.
Yes.
Let's just take a look at Midsummer. And say, okay, where are the roots? And if you look back at it, well, The Wicker Man is an obvious one. But films like that and The Witch and that sort of thing, they all have elements of what came before them, which is nice because, I mean, back in the 50s and stuff, while you had giant insects and robots. So at least now it's getting to be a little bit more modern and more diverse. So yeah, there may come a blending of all of them. The script I have sitting out there right now is based in true science. It's a disaster film. It's a love story. And the odd thing about it is a lot of the things that we detailed have begun to happen. And in a way, I wrote the screenplay and my partner goes through and he changes the dialogue a little bit. Because the worst thing a writer can do, especially on a screenplay, is be, talking in one voice. So he goes through and he makes changes to the dialogue where he thinks it's necessary. But yeah, we talk on the phone and he's going, "Did you see that?" I said, "Yeah, I know." So I just hope by the time, this film gets made that it's not totally outdated. Because it'll be another year. I mean, if we were to get the go-ahead now to begin shooting in the summer, it'd be about
There's still
8-9 months.
There's still a lot that hasn't come out yet, so
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
it'll still be a surprise.
And if one streamer turns you down, there's more.
Start your own.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. As I alluded to earlier, people want to make TV series because the payday is bigger. And it allows you to be more creative. A broad, you can take a broad concept and turn it into 10 episodes and hopefully 20 and that kind of thing. Where you're free from the restrictions of a 2-hour format. Well, I guess they are anyway with Marvel with 3 hours. So the hard part is, if you're thinking about becoming a filmmaker, is the old boys network is gone. The old studio boys network. But what's replaced it is a new boys network. To get any kind of contact information for production and development at any one of the streamers is next to impossible. You really have to know somebody who will share that information, or recently ran across an agent who has access to them all, but you have to cut her in as a producer, which isn't bad because you just raise the budget accordingly. So, but also what I was talking about earlier when it comes to low-end indie, I'm of two minds. I like the fact that creative people are out there trying. What I don't like is ultimately they'll ruin the film industry. You can't make movies on, oh yeah, well, think of the publicity you're going to get by being in this. There's a reason why there's unions and people get paid. There are people who have gone to school to be a cinematographer, who have broad experience as a cinematographer. But if you get yourself a camera and you go and you shoot a movie, that doesn't make you a cinematographer. You have to have an understanding of lighting and so many things, lenses, and it's so yeah. I download some films once in a while and I watch them on my Plex, and I can tell you within 5 minutes after the opening credits whether I'm going to watch it or not. because some of it is so low end. You know, it's like night shooting. What, you're not lighting the exterior scenes so that you can actually make it out when you watch it? Like, yeah,
I
so,
mean, for me personally, I have a short film I've been sitting on for 3 years now? And the only reason it's not made yet is because I want to pay my actors. I want to pay the people because they deserve that. They've worked hard in their industry, whether it's makeup, whatever it is, that's important to me. So when I have that money, that's what's going to be made. For me, it's super important that I have that budget set aside because these people deserve to be paid for their trade. There are some indie filmmakers that, like Jim said, it's just about, hey, your name's going to be up on the screen. For some people, that's good, that's fine. But it's worth it to me, and I know to these guys, to make sure that our people that are in our films are being paid properly. And that does affect when people go out with their iPhones and they're filming a movie. It affects the entire industry, whether it's up here or lower indie. Personally, my opinion.
one thing that a lot of would-be filmmakers don't understand is we do have a good tax credit system in Alberta. There are grants available from the federal government, telefilm, all sorts of things. You'll see a lot of horror films that say thank you to Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
There's an easy way to do that. You do some of your post-production there and you get that money.
BC too, I think.
But you're limited. You can get up to 30% of your budget back from the Alberta government, which is significant.
It's also why a lot of American production companies film up here too, because financially it makes sense.
But as a Canadian, every time I hire an American actor, it takes my ratio down. If I was to hire an American cinematographer, an American executive producer, the money that I'm going to get back from the government lowers itself. So there's always that consideration. That's one thing the streamers are looking for right now. They want dark. They want dark films that aren't fuzzy. The funny thing is,
they're funding that.
if you got your agent or lawyer to submit a script, that's not enough anymore. Now you have to have names attached, or people who are willing to. Well, I've got a Barbara Crampton is reading my script right now, and I want. All I asked from her was a letter of interest. When I called her agent, and this is typical, well, it's pay or play. And you go, well, you mean I have to pay her what I would pay her for the movie, even if the movie doesn't get made? So I contacted Barbara, she's been my friend on Facebook for ages, and said, look, will you just have a read through, and if so, would you send me a letter of interest? So she was kind enough to say yeah. But like any other industry, they want bucks. And Hollywood is nothing if not greedy. So, yeah, that's a tough one as well.
There's, just as an aside to that, you were talking a little while ago about watching 5 minutes of a film.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see whether you're going to watch it. From my point of view, I get assigned pictures. I'm very lucky. I get assigned things to watch, and I have to watch the whole thing. But I will admit here, there are two that I have watched. I've read a summary of, because I watched the opening credits, and I said I'm going to write a review on something in the summary, because it was abominable, not in terms of the technical aspect of it or the subject matter of it. Basically, it was a father making a movie so his kid could be in it. And he was a film professor. And he said, I'm doing this for my boy when my boy grows up and everything. And I'm going, why are you putting the public through this? You know,
Shame.
why are you making a glorified home video with a lot of budget and, you know, why are you making me watch it? I watched a little bit of it, but I'm going, if I did, I want my hour and 45 minutes back of my life, you know, in this.
Shame on you. Are there any witches in the audience? Why do we keep shame on top of our finger and push it towards people?
So brush it off to something
No
else.
easy answer for
Is
this.
that
Sorry,
a
Terry.
question? Is that trivia?
No,
It's
it's
just
not.
curiosity.
Just curiosity. Why do we keep shame here?
With Jim's thing of 5 minutes, some I have watched because they will start out poorly, but then there are scenes and there are moments in films that go, hey, this person has it. And further to what you both were saying about the craft of filmmaking, if we have filmmakers out there, please watch other film, not just horror. You can learn how things are set up. Read other than horror, expand, create, and watch the masters and the mistresses now in the filmmaking and see how they connect the dots in the story, see how they do it. Don't emulate them because that's no fun. Create your own voice, but that takes time. You have to write a lot of garbage and sometimes do a lot of garbage. And just because you have a video camera, it doesn't mean that you can shoot a film. But we're in the age when you get a digital camera, everybody thinks they're a photographer. So that's just from my end, having to watch a lot of it. A lot of the stuff I do watch comes from professional studios. They're not indie stuff. But you can still see it. You know, learn the craft. Ask questions.
Oh, and for the would-be filmmaker, I saw a picture of a Netflix acquisition room where they had scripts about this high around 2 walls. So if you're going to write a script, something better happen in that first 6 pages. That's crucial, because if it doesn't,
Same thing goes for on Amazon as well. Within the first 3 pages, if you don't catch your reader's attention, you've lost them. If you're a writer, reading other people's work is so important because you're going to get that different point of view and perspectives that you may not be able to see.
And you're going to steal. You're going to steal or borrow.
Emulate.
You know, but it's, you know, it's going to become your own.
Eventually,
We all
yes.
do. Everybody does. You steal it. So
I just have a question about screenwriting. So when you have like something in your head that you know you want to happen, do you think about the technical way you have to do that on the screen when you're writing it, or do you just write it out?
I write it out because a lot of that is left up to the director. But I'm very descriptive with the action. And the funny thing about screenwriting is it changes constantly. If you've read scripts, you used to see things like, we see.
Yeah.
You don't do that anymore. It's basically like writing a novel.
there's the difference though,
You
Jerry.
take the actor.
Isn't there? There's the treatment of the film where you do like say 6-7 pages of it.
Mhm.
There's the screenplay and then the shooting script.
Yeah, well,
Three
the
different things.
final screenplay is usually the
Yeah.
shooting script. Here's a trivia question. Can anybody name the American director who invented the splatter film? Sometimes they know him as the godfather of gore.
And insurance. It's true, in insurance.
The director who made Blood Feast in 1963. His initials are HGL.
And sounds like a Jewish law firm.
Okay.
That's not meant as a slight.
Never thought of that.
It's true.
Anybody
It
know
sounds
who
like a
directed
Jewish
The
law firm.
Wizard of Gore? Stuart, I can't give you every single. Okay, here's one. Who wants a movie poster?
Now, this is not just a job, it's an education.
Can I ask you a trivia question?
Sure.
What character am I? Think musical horror.
Sweeney Todd.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you very
Candy Girl?
What does she get?
much. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay,
That's a
I have a trivia question and a prize too. Can anyone tell me what Stephen King's best-selling novel is? Go ahead.
I want to say it.
Nope.
The pronoun, yes.
Go ahead.
Is it Carrie?
Nope.
Is it Cujo?
Christine.
I
Nope.
think it might be the Green Mile.
The Stand.
Nope.
The phone
Go
book.
ahead.
I'm not sure if this is the best-selling book, but it is the one book that's banned. It's called Rage, and it's about a school shooter. It was
Nope,
banned
but that was a
because of-
really good one. I own the book too.
I don't have the book. I just heard trivia about it because it was specifically banned because actual school shooters had it. Okay, I'll stop.
It's a good. I read it. It's a very good story. But you're right. It is banned, and I happened to find it at a used bookstore, which is the only reason I have it. Okay, so then it's based around a hotel.
1308.
Go ahead. The Shining. Come on up.
Come on down.
Come on down.
You're the next contestant of The Price is Right.
Yes. It's behind showcase number 1. Number 2. The shadow puppets.
Thank you. You're welcome.
It explodes later.
No, it doesn't.
That's why it's a horror film.
That's mine at home that explodes.
It's going to explode. Can I just shift this a little bit from, we were talking about indie to big budget horror films?
Yeah.
Has anybody seen any big budget, big screen film, either be Netflix, in the theater that they have enjoyed, other than Stephen King?
Candyman.
New one.
Hereditary.
Young lady?
Scream.
Scream.
Good choice.
Oh, Last Night in Soho.
To tell with the dark.
I enjoyed Quiet Place.
Quiet Place was really interesting. Yeah, I didn't like this. Was it the second one that was Quiet Place?
I haven't seen the second one.
Did you see it in the theater?
I did.
Is there a huge difference? Would you think you have liked it if you watched it in the comfort of your home as opposed to with a bunch of other people? I think there's an experience in that.
Are there a bunch of people in theaters these days?
Yeah.
Not really.
Really?
Where I am.
Really?
Oh.
No, I think the theater gives it a different kind of atmosphere. One I saw recently was Night of the Living Dead because the Plaza did a special showing of it, and that was very different to see in the theater than it is to watch at home.
The 68 version, the 1968.
It's my favorite.
Why do we remake things? Besides the obvious, to make money? Is it because we want to tell something different? Or is it because it's easy to do because we own the property? Or is it we want to lavish our effects on it?
This nostalgia, I think.
Yeah.
They can really bank on that. If somebody really likes the movie, they'll definitely go see if it's good or not.
That's true, because if the original version tanked, then they can go, hey, let's go watch the original.
Absolutely.
Like I was gonna say, I think it's also kind of a shared love. Like I loved this. I want the next generation to appreciate what I loved, and kind of that's their way to pass it forward. Yeah. But I can take it to this level now with
Yeah.
like modern effects and money and whatnot.
I think a lot of it is comfort too. We know these films. We may have grown up with these films. It could have been our first terror movie. Whatever that connection is, I think that the comfort plays a huge part of that.
I think too is remember when Tom Cruise made The Mummy? And that was supposed to be the precursor of a new
Dark
universal
Universe.
horror cycle.
Yeah.
And thank goodness they did not. Because although there was an intriguing bit of casting when they had Javier Bardem to be the monster, which would have been very interesting, because he's a tremendous actor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really a shame that the Universal Dark Universe just kind of tanked.
Have anybody ever seen, speaking of Javier, anybody ever seen him in Perdido Durango?
Yes.
Those? Yes, or actually, the Ricardos?
Yeah, the Ricardos.
is-
There's a vast contrast.
Right, what a performance in the Ricardos, and then the young guy in Perdido Durango, which is on Arrow, incidentally.
It's a pretty good horror film.
But you see, it's not. Is that really horror? We're getting back into that's like crime and
again,
spree and a bunch of
there's
people.
demonology and stuff like that. I mean, there are people who say, well, I'm a comic book fan. Constantine isn't horror. Well, yeah, John Constantine is horror. I mean, he fights demons all the time. I mean, that's...
It's so subjective now,
Yeah.
I think.
Have you ever thought about, just speaking of Constantine, when you talk about fighting demons, yet he fights his own personal demons of
Yes.
when he smokes all the time, and I don't read the books. Does he drink?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well then maybe there's a little allusion to that. Yes, I'm just babbling here.
Who watched? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. I'm light horror, like everywhere. But I guess I would like your perspective, and obviously everybody in the room. But you see other people trying to take elements of horror. Like look at Marvel, right?
Mhm.
Look at Moon Knight, and look at some of the stuff in even Captain America, and that Disney went back and took out.
Mhm.
Of that series, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? Like I guess from your perspective, you see that as they're just kind of trying to take some of this stuff and just market it, as opposed to, do you see a path where, because I could see Marvel doing horror, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, Doctor Strange 2 is coming, and that's
Yeah.
Sam Raimi making it a horror film. So,
It's about marketing again, though, too. Some of it, when it comes from the video game, it comes to the big screen. If you don't know it's a video game, you're going to go and get that. You're going to buy the toy. You're going to buy action figure, right?
Yes.
Action figure. You're going to go out there and get the autograph of the person who's done this.
Mm-hmm. You're always going to have that hard media, which brings us back to that too.
well, I mean, I having come from a background in marketing since the 80s, I don't think people know how to market these days. But you were mentioning Moon Knight. You enjoying it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess it's more of a psychological thriller with aspects of elements of horror, maybe. Like I don't know how you describe it, but
It's delightful.
It's really interesting. Like, it's so unique. It's different. I think what I like about it is the uniqueness, because when I think back to my childhood, I watched, the Freddy Kruegers and the Jasons and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you kind of get tired of that same formula again. It's like, how many times can you keep coming back to life to do the same thing over and over again, right? So maybe I lost that aspect of some of that newness because that's what Hollywood marketed, right? But yeah.
Did you read the book or the books?
Do you know, I'm
The
so
Koontz?
bad at that. Like I've read some Stephen King stuff, but like I'm more into the science fiction, fantasy kinds of things, right? When it comes to reading, not so much the lore. But I wish I had, because my daughter reads a lot of it. And she says it's like a lot of the books and just the humanistic aspects that come out of it, right? And the real psychological twistedness of some of it, right? Like it's just
That's a long debate about the line of demarcation between science fiction and horror. It's been going on since, past, Alien, people have said that. Gone into, was It, The Terror from Beyond Time. Mario Bava's Planet of Vampires which is pretty cool and scared me, the cellophane vampires coming out in slow motion when it came out.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, I just watched Dr. Sid, the Scarecrow.
oh,
Now, when I was a kid, that was on Disney. The Wonderful World of Disney every Saturday at 6 or Sunday at 6 o'clock in the evening.
was that Patrick McGowan?
Patrick McGowan
Yeah.
from The Prisoner, yeah, and he puts on this scarecrow outfit, which scared little 8-year-old me, I think I was. But yeah, just recently we watched it. It holds up, but we see that Disney was doing this kind of thing back in the 60s. You know?
Some people have said Mary Poppins is a supernatural film. They've even gone so far as to say
Well, clearly.
It's a Wonderful Life has elements of the supernatural in it. It's also a debate whether it's a film noir. So everything is.
Clarence the angel comes to help him. So if there's an angel, there's going to be demons.
That's the whole thing, though, in the 40s when they made the fantasy films, like The Man Who Could Work Miracles, Angels in the Outfield, all of these, the H.G. Wells films that they made, Master of the World. All of these films were the great fantasies. Well, mind you, then you're dealing with people that wanted real escapism because of a war. And
It's much different.
has it changed? There's people that want escapism because of a war. So,
Or people that want escapism from their lives.
yes, and that brings up my other thing I was mentioning about mental illness and how it's affected us. And it's affected all of us.
In some way or another, for sure.
Look at us.
Hey, speak for yourself.
Okay, I will.
Okay, who can name a director who is known as kind of like the father of giallo films? Giallo.
There's always room
From
for
Italy.
Jell-O. There's always room for Jell-O.
Always.
Go ahead.
What do you mean by jello? I haven't really heard that term before, so I'm curious.
Giallo are bloody murder mysteries coming from Italy.
With the crystal plumage.
I can't think I know because I can't handle gore.
With the
Okay.
crystal plumage and
Yeah.
the tarantula belly.
An amount of gore seems to rely on gore or blood and stuff.
Well, it does, because the audiences tend to like it a lot.
I don't.
Well, no, but again, everybody's subjective, you know. That's the thing. I mean, and this is from the guy who produced Herschel Gordon Lewis's last film, The Godfather of Gore. So you're either into it or you're not. That's fine. You know, there's a lot of people who. Everybody's got a different taste. Anybody seen that movie Atros? Remember that one?
That was an
It was a recommended Spanish film,
Oh, yeah.
and Melanie and I sat down as well as a woman who goes by the name Susan Voorhees, hardcore horror fan.
She's
And
awesome.
It was our movie night, so we turned on Atros, and about 15 minutes in, we all looked at each other, and I turned it off.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't even horror anymore, it was human degradation. And I will not watch it.
It was horrifying, actually.
Yeah. You know, there's so many subgenres. Giallo, who knows who directed Deep Red?
Is it Barbara?
No, but close.
It's the right country.
Fulci?
No.
That's the limit of my knowledge.
Yes. JLo doesn't have a lot of penetration here in North America yet, I guess. So,
Yeah, true enough.
but it's a gold mine. If you want to see fusion, you watch they're called, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I pronounce it as JLo, or not like as in JLo, as in.
Well, I used to say Giallo, and then I watched Eli Roth's History of Horror, and he calls it Jello.
Yeah, it stands for actually yellow, which was actually the paper that they produced these pulp novels on in Italy. And if you want to see it, look up the genre, and it's basically a murder mystery. Somebody in a leather raincoat that knifes somebody or commits other heinous acts, usually against a comely female. It's true. And then there's a hero that tries to solve it, and the police come in, and it's usually a police investigation. They're a combination thriller and horror film.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those were two good answers. Now you gotta promise me you watched some films by Dario Argento.
Yes.
I think I probably have, but for some reason his name.
Is that Elvira on your
Suspira.
forum?
Yeah, it is.
Sweet.
Nice.
Got reanimated there too.
Oh, nice.
The
Herbert
Creek.
West.
Very nice.
Suspira, you will enjoy.
Spirit, yeah.
Yes, it's a little, it'll twist you up. If you understand it, then you'll have to figure out, how did I understand it?
No doubt.
Because it's brilliant. It's so, becomes different interpretations for everybody. So, there's a remake of it, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
original one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah, far better. Can anybody name a horror film that the remake, in your opinion, is better than the original? Go ahead in the back.
Evil Dead.
Really?
Actually, Evil Dead was pretty good.
The Thing.
Oh, definitely The Thing. I mean, come on. Wow.
It's way better than the 1950s one.
Yeah, well, it came from outer space. I mean, James Arnaz is a vegetable monster.
But that, different time, no, different time.
Mhm.
Dealing with, well, it's not a different time.
I stood on your grave. I stood on your grave.
No, I'm kind of a Camille Keaton fan.
Yeah,
so.
I like the original one, but it was horrifying to watch.
Young lady?
Is Invasion of the Body Snatchers considered a horror film?
Yeah,
Yes,
Absolutely.
very close.
that's a good one.
There was a couple different remakes of it, so
Yeah, I would say The Fly as well, obviously.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, I mean,
I just bought that yesterday.
like the original?
Yeah, the original.
Cronenberg.
And I hadn't watched it in years. And I put the opening 10 minutes on because I wanted to see, first of all, if the DVD worked. I'd have to bring it back. And it was enthralling for the first 15 minutes of it. I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but I will. The murder on the press, you know, and I didn't know this, but Vincent Price, that was his start in horror films.
Really?
His genre films. They looked at him because they didn't know how to work with him because of his diction, the way that he did. He did a lot of film noir, crime movies, romantic leads, Shakespeare, and then he did The Fly, which was 1956, and they go, this guy can do genre films, and that's what started him.
Oh, cool.
So I didn't know that. So,
That's awesome.
Anybody else have a better remake than the original? I would say, though, I Spit on Your Grave. Yeah, I didn't mind the modern retelling of what there was 4 of them, I think. And I know there was a sequel to I Spit in Your Grave Deja Vu with Camille Keaton.
well, is it any good?
No,
which one?
I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu. I was watching it and Facebook messaging with Camille, while I was doing it. And yeah, it was overly long. You could easily have taken out 40 minutes for a much more concise cut. And I didn't really enjoy what happened to Camille's character. But apart from that, I mean, her daughter becomes the new. She is vengeance. What movie was that? Oh, the Batman. I'm vengeance.
You are. I always thought you were Jim. Jim Vengeance.
James V.
That could be
Saito.
my next thriller. You could be the.
I tell people my middle name is Vincent.
My
It's
middle name is
vengeance.
Vengeance. I walked into the room, the ominous staccato of rain on the desktop. The secretary lay snoring on the floor, her long, beautiful gowns folded up underneath her knees. I looked at my name. It said Rignod Cassin. It was backwards because the door was closed.
5 minutes, okay. All right, on a Michael Jackson song, one of his bigger hits, you've got a gentleman horror actor who does the opening. And
That's a shadow puppet.
It's in the price, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
What a segue, Jim.
That was great.
yeah,
We
Brilliant.
set that up, didn't
Very
we?
good.
I set that up.
Yeah, and that was
there you go. Sarah Karloff's autograph.
You alluded to that one quite early, so.
I
Okay,
set that one up.
Oh, that's good.
let's see, what else do I have in this
It's your
bag?
lunch. Don't.
Oh, medical marijuana. I'm not going to give it to as a trivia question. It's for Kevin Smith.
And we're talking
I think
about-
he should share.
So, final trivia question of the day. Speaking of remakes, King Kong has been remade twice. The original of the 1930s, then you had Dino De Laurentiis' version, and then you had Peter Jackson's version.
What was the one with Skull Island? Would that count as like yet another remake?
Well, sort of.
And
King
Godzilla.
Kong.
I mean, it's not the exact storyline because there's
Right.
Godzilla, but it's still a King Kong movie.
So in those three King Kong, the original King Kong and the two remakes, can you name the actresses who played the damsel in distress in each one?
Fay Wray was the original.
One of them was born in Cardston.
That's
Jessica Lange.
and stuff.
It was Jessica Lange.
She has a fountain named after her in the town. I've been there.
That's where my uncle's from.
I don't know the third one. Was Mary Watts.
We could just say it's Meryl Streep because she does everything.
It's true. You two can, you two helped each other there, so you can share custody of Kong.
Okay.
And this is courtesy of Phoenix Comics on 17th Avenue Southwest.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Anybody have any final questions? I think we're out of,
Pretty
are we? Well, we're 15 minutes.
I actually have
15 minutes.
Yeah, go for it.
So kind of bringing it back to books and the kind of horror genre there. And again, I don't know how he kind of falls into like horror specifically, but what are your thoughts on Dean Koontz, and do you find if there's any like monotony in his stories?
Oh,
Like,
yes.
I feel like a lot of him is like, there's this dog and there's this hero and they do some supernatural thing together.
It's like
So-
Hemingway, can you stop describing it? I'm gonna describe it for another 18 pages. It's the same sort of, yeah.
Do you find that's kind of helped his success, or do you think that hinders him as an author?
Personally, I find it hinders him. There's so much in books, and again, it's why it's important to read other people's work, that you could have taken out, like in films. There's so many things you can take out that would have just made a more concise story. You didn't need to have 15 pages about the squirrel in the tree in the park across the way. I get bored with Dean Koontz because of that. it's just so long and drawn out. For me personally.
Anybody seen movies based on Koontz's
I've
books?
seen the Watcher, well, the one based on the Watcher, the two of them, they were absolute trash. Because that's my favorite book by him.
Yeah.
It's so good. But
Affleck was the bomb in Phantoms, yo.
What, I'd be curious, we had some of the younger folk down at the far end. What do you people watch in horror? Do you read? Do you write? Do you play the video games?
I like indie horror games.
So,
Watching playthroughs of them, I really find them really neat and interesting, especially how they sort of go to a retro graphic style. You can
because you don't want to come across as being a bunch of boring old farts up here that just talk about old movies and tell you what to watch. I'm just curious, because you actually are the new market, you know, so.
Young redhead in the back.
Yeah.
I kind of been watching a lot of like little short film compilations on Netflix. Like there was one that came out called XX, and it was all these kind of short horror films about women. And then there was another one I recently watched. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called like The House or something like that. It was kind of 3 short horror-esque films about different things that happened in this house. Yeah.
Like an anthology almost.
Yeah.
Do you prefer anthology films? Is this because?
I think I do, because after a long day of work, I just kind of want something digestible. I know there are a few nice anthology YouTube series out there that I'd like to get into. Unfortunately.
Well, a shameless plug, watch Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Mania anthology film on Amazon Prime or Vimeo.
Or Tubi.
Or Tubi.
Right, Gordo?
Or the Mausoleum Collection, which is on Shudder. Excuse me. Getting
Well, there's the Mortuary Collection. Is that what you mean? The Mortuary
Yeah,
Collection?
well, I said the Mausoleum.
Yeah, the Mortuary
There is one called Mausoleum too, but the Mortuary Collection. Yeah.
Yes, my dear.
Have you guys ever watched Willy's Wonderland?
Yes.
Yes.
It was good. I liked it.
Despite the lag of Nicolas Cage talking, I thought it was really good.
His movies are very interesting. Mom and Dad made me laugh so hard. I watched that about 3 times because it was just hilarious to me. And I find Nicolas Cage's horror flicks they're really good.
I really like Mandy.
Yeah, that was a really good
Who's looking forward to seeing Nick Cage as Dracula?
No.
I'm curious. I have to say I'm curious.
Yeah, I have to watch. I have to watch.
It's like a train wreck where you have to look when you go by. It's the same sort of thing.
Anybody have opinions on who the best Dracula ever was?
You're gonna hate me, but Klaus Bang from the Netflix one,
Love that. Yeah.
just a primal, monstrous, charismatic. Oh, I love it.
Was that the BBC one?
He emerges from a wolf naked. Oh,
Yeah.
Even if it was the little James Bond at sometimes.
Well, I'll always think of 5 minutes. What time is it?
Different interpretations, I
We've
guess.
got about 10 minutes, don't we?
5.
Well, it's 12:18, so we had 11 till 12:30. Oh well, just
Dracula wise, I don't think anyone was more imposing than Christopher Lee.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Just sheer presence and stature, and he had that glare, with his eyes red and his teeth coming out.
Well, with all the Hammer films, didn't you find that Dracula was fairly easy to kill?
He was, which always pissed me off. But just his stature and the way he looked, sheer appearance, I thought, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did enjoy that Dracula as well, the BBC version. I really liked the first episode of that, the part 1. I liked the way the series ended. It kind of stunned me in the same way that Midnight Mass did in the final episode. Anybody have a worst Dracula? Who played the worst Dracula?
David Niven.
No, I get on.
I just reviewed, I was fortunate enough, I was assigned a film called, the British title was called Vampira, which had nothing to do with Vampira, who was the
Vampire
host,
Queen.
the host from the 50s, Melanie McCurdie. But it was called Old Dracula because it played with young Frankenstein, which you're going to hate me because I thought it was abominable. I still won't watch it because I have an intense dislike for Gene Wilder and anything he does. He just kills everything, along with a number of other actors I won't get into. But yeah, David Niven, he was actually very aristocratic because that was the way he is. But the storyline is very 1970s. He actually, I'll mention a little bit of it right now. He actually turns into a dark-skinned Dracula vampire because he mixes the blood with his wife, who happens to be of color. And this is the whole story about him trying to find the blood to replace her actual blood. She was played by Cecily Tyson.
Really? I'll have to watch that.
I'm gonna
Old
have to check
Dracula.
that out.
I believe it was.
Yeah, but my vote for worst Dracula ever was in Andy Warhol's Dracula. Klaus Kinski. Oh,
Oh, you mean that's Klaus? That's Nosferatu.
no, Klaus was in Andy Warhol's Frankenstein and Andy Warhol's Dracula.
I thought that was this is what this
Oh, no, it wasn't Klaus Kinski. Who was it? Look it up. IMDb it.
I have been wrong once or twice in my life.
Anybody seen any good werewolf films lately? I've seen some bad werewolf films lately.
There's a lot of bad werewolves.
There's a lot of bad werewolf films. I usually go back to the 80s for mine. I just...
I can't remember his name, but the fellow plays the werewolf. and
You don't
it's
care.
a watch.
You Don't Care was in that.
Udo Kier.
Don't Care. It was
Udo Kier.
just brilliant. You know, the guy could just stand there and keep going like.
Yeah, well, worst Dracula ever. But,
Not George Hamilton?
no, well, it's close. Yeah, werewolf movies. I mean, most of them these days, the transformation scenes just aren't good. And I mean, really, that's the money shot of any werewolf film is the transformation.
It's probably intimidating though when you have really great ones like from American Werewolf in London and Howling, and those guys were like pioneers of that particular werewolf transformation. So
It's cool that you mentioned Werewolf of London, because that was actually the blueprint for the Lon Chaney's later film, 1941. Because that was 1933. And that's when they discovered, they go, well, hey, this sort of started the trope of, except it changed to Wolfbane, when it changed, as opposed to the Moonflower from the first film. That was actually, this is, we can put this on the screen, but now we're going to lose Lon Chaney Jr. in this later on.
Well, he was a master.
There was actually a Canadian television series that ran for 3 seasons called Bitten, which is a pretty good werewolf series.
doesn't that have like what's her name that played Supergirl? In CW's what was that, Smallville? Like
Yeah.
something or other.
But yeah, amazing.
And Ginger Snaps, too.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody see I Know What You Did Last Summer? The one season? I just kept watching for the girl.
I thought you meant the movie.
No, it was a 8-part series or something. It kind of stuck to, the storyline, but I don't know. The girl who played the twins, though, I could just sit there and watch her all day.
It's interesting, there are no actual horror guests here to autograph. I guess you could say Katie Sackhoff is.
Robert Englund.
Sure,
Well,
and England,
England is
yes,
here,
yes.
Well, Patty Mullen is here too.
See, I can generate, and I don't even have to know anything. I could generate discussion.
Well, if you're gonna discuss horror, I guess you could count Kevin Smith.
Yes,
It was
yes.
awful.
Yeah, but Calgary also has a separate horror con.
That's true.
The yeah, I mean, there's hope out there. I mean, there are some series coming down the pipe. Who saw X?
Haven't seen
Oh, you're in for a treat, folks. X is a throwback to 70s, 80s films, where they actually tell a story. And nothing really happens except character development and setting things up for the first hour. But the next 45 minutes become a bit of a violent
It's kind of like this panel.
gore fest.
I'm sorry. I like to poke fun at me.
But of course, you kids.
There was much taken from the other. Andrew's appearing. I'm sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to Doctor Strange too. I want to see what Sam Raimi can do with it, and hopefully, it's good. I mean, Spider-Man: No Way Home was. But I was a Spider-Man fan since I was a boy, so to me it was like, wow, that's ultimate. I may not like every series Marvel puts out. Because I'm on the fence about Moon Knight.
You need to watch Moon Knight.
I've watched every episode.
Okay, well, you'll like it more.
Well, I like aspects of it, but I go, gee, this is Disneyfied. But
You were big on the Peacemaker, too.
I like the Peacemaker because it's raunchy, dirty, and funny. Yeah,
There's not enough humor in horror anyway.
Superhero series ended for me with George Reeves. So, I'm just kidding.
Well,
So-
Supes is the man, come on.
Yeah, there's quite a story about him, but that's a totally different panel. So, the man was prestigious in many areas of his life.
What I hear.
Yes.
Speaking of Superman, I guess they've kind of given control of the next Superman film to Bad Robot Films and J.J. Abrams.
Why?
Yeah, why? I don't know.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is, because he'll kind of ruin.
He'll ruin Supes.
Yeah, he'll ruin it the way he ruined Star Trek.
Not that I'm
and
a
Star
fan of
Wars.
Superman or anything.
So what are everybody's plans for the rest of the convention? Are you going to try to hit autographs? Are you going to try to go out and buy some horror merchandise?
Yes, my dear.
Or just go home because it's come back tomorrow?
I'm gonna go to Artist Alley and go to the top of the My Hero Academia voice actors.
That'll be fun.
Cool, that's good.
If you have a chance, go see Nat Jones. His art is wonderful. Yes, I got
Yeah,
mine
Nat's over
prints
in-
yesterday.
This is
His Frankenstein prints they're delicious.
Yeah, Nat Jones had his own comic for the longest time called 68, a zombie comic book. You'll recognize him. He's got dreads and he's he's a really cool guy. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
his art's spectacular, so definitely check him out.
but I guess it's
All
time
right.
for us to
Yes,
wrap
we're done.
this up.
Thank you,
And I
everyone.
thank you all for coming out. Really appreciate it. If they get you to fill out any kind of questionnaire or something about the panel.
Disavow any knowledge of your actions.
Also, starting tomorrow, I have some of my books available for free on Amazon for a couple days. They just didn't put it through today. So go ahead and download them if you wish.
Melanie McCurdie.
I have no books for
Guilty.
free. You have to pay for them. They're $5.99. I'm quite blunt about it. You can
It's
even get it
worth
for
it.
hardcover too. I got a hardcover which I don't even have, which I'd like to see, but Amazon wants to charge me $35. Did I say that? That's for 5 of them.
Really?
$35 for hardcover.
It costs me a whole lot more than that.
Well, thank you, folks.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Please enjoy the rest of your convention. We'll see you next year.
Absolutely.